Nic Barker is an independent filmmaker. He's made more than 30 films. Most of them have been short films, but he's also done one independent feature and some documentaries. Welcome to Tete-a-Tete, Nic. Thank you very much for giving me your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to start by asking you about the name of your company, Tired Frog Films.
When I was first sort of setting up an email address at a very young age of 6 or 7, we were with Big Pond, and Dad decided that it would be funny to do joke handles for you. So Tired Frog at Big Pond became my my email address at the age of 6, and that it kind of stuck. I don't think I've used it for any more than my childhood years. I don't know if it's active or not still, but when it came to sort of coming up with like a interesting sounding name to put on the films and sort of register as a business name, I don't know, I just couldn't kind of shake that name, so I kind of figured, why not?
Oh, it's cute. Yeah, it's good.
Hopefully it's a little bit quirky, I guess, but
So how did filmmaking come into your life?
I first realised that I was sort of drawn to it when doing sort of video projects in early high school, maybe late primary school.
Wow.
Like a special course that they got some students to do with animation, and I loved that. So, but when my parents got me a mini DV camera for Christmas at like 14 or 15 years old, I think that's when it really sort of kicked in that, I'd really like to do this and play around with it. And
what is it that makes you so passionate about making films?
I think it's one of those things that even more so than, telling stories that resonate with people. And I think that, being able to share that experience in a cinema is a really powerful thing, or, even, watching at home, it's a really powerful shared experience. I also think it's a medium that encompasses so many different things. Like you've got, your musicians and your performers and your designers, and I feel like it encompasses so many crafts. So I think there's always things to discover, and I always find that endlessly fascinating. So I guess that's probably a roundabout way of answering that question, I guess.
Now, a lot of your films are short films, and you make them with a very small crew.
Yeah.
So how do you go about doing that? Tell us about your process.
A lot of it was ways to sort of, make little comedies with friends and hang out with them. And we all had sort of a drive to make stuff without the preciousness of it being high art, I suppose. We all loved film, and we all just kind of wanted to go and shoot something. It became the same as, hey, do you want to go get dinner or go to the pub or something? Like, it's like, hey, let's go shoot something.
That's fantastic.
It was very loose. A lot of them came together really fast. Obviously, there's been projects that I've invested a lot of time into, and multiple shooting days. But I think nothing for me has ever beaten the energy of, hey, let's get up, pick up a camera, and just kind of do it. Anyone can do it at any point. There's you run out of excuses at a certain point, so why not just, and if you're not happy with it, you just go do it again and hope for the best the next time,
So what's your preferred, what do you prefer to do on the shoot? You work from, obviously, the idea is something that you come up with, or is that collaborative as well?
In terms of coming up with the ideas, sometimes, you just get a burst of inspiration, and sometimes, you hear a sentence from someone and like, oh, that's interesting, let's talk about it. In terms of what I really like to do, in some ways, I really love the directing process. It's what I've sort of gravitated to mostly, sort of writing, directing, and editing. And I think it's because of the ability to sort of be part of a team. It's a very collaborative and exciting environment, and there's no bad ideas, and if you can draw on ideas from pretty much anyone. So I've always loved collaboration aspect.
Yeah, it's interesting that you pick those three, because they say, don't they, that a film is really made 3 times. There's the writing, there's the production, and then there's the editing suite.
Absolutely.
Those are the 3 that you particularly like to do.
I think the writing comes out of necessity, because without the writing, you don't get to the other 2.
Yeah.
I have occasionally found writing to be a bit of a chore, but that may be a controversial thing to say. But it helps a lot to be writing with people. I think that creating, I'm not the sort of person that thrives creating ideas in a vacuum. And so I think that when you're working with other people and bringing an idea to life, it's a very enjoyable process. Directing, I've always found, has been a bit about discovery. Nothing really goes the way you expect it to, and that's kind of fine. The best stuff that you find on set is the the little surprises and the good idea that, you know, say someone's come along to be an extra and pipes up and says, oh, how about this? You know, maybe it wouldn't fly on a massive set, but, you know, when we're, you know, doing small stuff or not as precious about it, you know, it's great to just draw ideas from everywhere. And then I guess editing is a whole other beast unto itself.
Certainly is. I know you like to work in an improvised style, so can you tell us about how you do that?
Well, the last few shorts that I've done, it started with a film I made in 2015 called Dead Sharks. I was quite keen to sort of work with improvisation and really get behind the camera as well. So I operate the camera for most of the improvised shorts that I make. I think that was a way of having an idea but bypassing the writing process in some respects, perhaps, and just sort of seeing how it went, not as a general rule, but just as a bit of an experiment. The process has kind of stayed the same in a sense, like it's probably 1-2 sentences per scene. We've got a beginning, we've got an end. In short films, you know, you can inhabit a small space of time. You're not looking at any sort of grand story arcs. We sort of get out onto set, maybe it's 1 or 2 actors, mic them up wirelessly, so it's me on camera, a sound person, and the actors. It's very small, very intimate. Just let them go, really, and sort of see what you come up with.
So you must have a very good and clear shared vision with the actors, so they know what the arc is and what you want them, what the story is that you want to tell. In
a respect, yeah. So Dead Sharks is 4 stories about relationships that are kind of hitting a breaking point. And
do you want to tell us what the quote is? Because I love that.
Certainly. So the Woody Allen quote that inspired the film is, a relationship is like a shark. It has to keep moving or it dies. And I think he follows that up with what we have on our hands here is a dead shark, from the film Annie Hall. And it's always been something that it's a very bleak, pessimistic idea. But in that respect, the actors in the films that I make that are improvised are all credited co-writers, because whilst, you know, sometimes there's more of a structure there than others, sometimes it's 4 sentences, they bring a lot of thought and backstory, and all of the dialogue is original. There's no lines fed to them. We're running these takes for 30-40 minutes at a time. Really? They're just inhabiting these characters. So
wow. So you must shoot a lot of footage that you then have to cut down.
In some ways, yeah. The takes are very long, but towards, you know, once you've done 3 or 4, if that, you kind of have a good idea of a lot of possibilities where the scene could go. So I think in that respect, when the energy's there and everyone's kind of got an understanding of A and B, you know, you can kind of get away with a lot on the first and second take, and then it's just a matter of, can we get this here or can we try this? And then once the energies are a little bit lower, we can kind of review. So
you do a lot of rolling resets?
Unless I absolutely have to, I won't cut. Like if something any sort of technical thing happens, I'll just say, hey, can we just go back to here and see how we go? But I like to kind of leave the actors to it and become a bit like a glorified documentarian in a sense. Be very hands-off. Right. And only really hands-on once, and discussing with them once we cut. So
do you do any rehearsal beforehand, or you just basically shoot the rehearsal and on you go through?
None, no rehearsal at all.
Okay.
It might not seem like best practice, but, you know, in quite a few occasions, you know, it seems like it's been very fresh and energetic and very raw, you know, to just arrive on set, maybe chat for 15 minutes and then bang, we're right into it. There's a bit of conversation that obviously happens before the day, you know, talking to the actors and really outlining what it is we're hoping to do, maybe reference material, but ultimately we're onto set, we talk for a little bit and then just dive straight in.
How do you work with your actors?
How I work with most actors is to give them a take or two to kind of just do whatever they want and work out the kinks. And if there's, you know, oftentimes if you're clear in your communication beforehand, before the shoot and everything, it won't necessarily be exactly what's in your head, but that's kind of good, because what's in your head is very stagnant and specific and you want a little bit of liveliness to it. there's times where, like, you know, you'll say, oh, discuss the intention of a scene or where it fits in a grander arc, but I tend to be pretty hands-off and more collaborative rather than extremely direct, I think, because I think, you know, they have as good an idea or better of where this character should be than me.
And I imagine that as people are kind of going over and over the material, they are refining what they're saying to each other as well.
I think so.
So you probably start with perhaps stuff that's a bit more wordy, but people would refine it down and really get to the essence of what it is that they want to say to each other.
I think so, yeah. And then a lot of the time with these improvised scenes, you can sort of, you know, hey, the first half's great, and then have a better idea of where the material needs to lead, which you can then review after the first take and go into the second. And because we've got, you know, we're running, you know, half-hour takes, possibly longer sometimes, you can sort of direct a little bit on the fly. On these improvised shoots, it's just me and sound recordist and the actors, so it's very very tight-knit, and so in a sense I'm just watching them and reacting with the framing, but I'm in a lot of ways experiencing that performance firsthand as an audience member would. And yeah.
So you end up, I mean, these films in the end are between sort of 4.5 and 8 minutes typically, and you're doing takes that are lasting for half an hour, so you must end up with quite a lot of footage.
Yeah, with the editing process, the longest improv-based film I've done is 15 minutes, but that was sort of 4-minute stories, so maybe that's cheating a little bit, and they were quite separate. You do end up with a heap of material for a 4 to 10 minute film. Usually it's it could be anywhere between an hour to 2, depending on how many sort of takes you do. I often find I use a lot of material from the first take or two, just because it's it's got that energy and that rawness, and then if you want specific things, chances are you've addressed those in later takes. But it is a very terrifying process at first, because you've got a bit of a mountain to climb, and it's about sort of finding the gems in those takes and kind of smashing them into a linear time frame. I've always thought of it as a bit of a Frankenstein's monster of a line from this take, a line from that take. Very rarely is dialogue repeated, so it's just about making it work.
Yeah, because you'd have lots of different energy as well.
Yeah.
So you've got to find ways to match the energy through your through line as well.
And tone as well. Yeah. Absolutely. Like you can have, very broad, silly comedy here, or you can have something that's way too depressing over here and way too dark and it's about having an idea of that tone and then finding things that sort of suit the vision, but because you've got an idea of tone but not the specific idea in advance of what the performances need to be, and leaving that a lot to chance, it's daunting, but it's very exciting when you sort of get into the edits where I get to experience this again and just absolutely cherry pick the best of the best stuff. I kind of enjoy it more than editing it, traditional scripted setups, if you will. How
long does it take you to edit?
I always think it's going to be, this will be months and months that I have to delve through all this material, but generally if I, for a film that's, 5 to 10 minutes, the most recent of which I finished one called Cheapskate in March, and we shot that in October. But a lot of that time, was working collaborating with a sound designer, collaborating with a composer, doing the grade, and working 9 to 5 the whole time. So trying to find time for it. So I would say a month or 2 is usually how long it would take me to get a fine cut.
Right, well, that's not too bad.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that you do with your short films is you put them out to festivals.
Yes.
Tell me about the festival process.
It's really exploded in the last, hard to say how many years. I mean, the last decade I would have seen heaps of change, especially with online portals for submitting to film festivals, online hubs that make it really accessible for filmmakers to find events and vice versa. Any income I get, I'll just throw whatever at various festivals and see how we go. Now I think that attitude has shifted a little bit, and I sort of try and find events that have programming that maybe suits the tone of the work that I produce, or local stuff that I would really hope to find an audience in.
You've had a couple that have done really well at a number of festivals, like Pint. And
Yes.
Congratulations, that's
Thank you
gone
very much.
really, really well.
Yeah, that was a bit of a wild one.
It was I really loved it. It was a lovely piece.
I appreciate that very much. That is a very broad, accessible comedy, and I think for that reason it programmed very well. And what doesn't hurt as well is if you have, success in a festival. I think we got into 70 or 80 from memory of various sizes, but it was quite mind-boggling. You get to in contact with these festival directors and stuff like that, and so it's you've got history with these events, and it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and you've got one that's coming up at the St Kilda Film Festival.
Yeah, it was a terrific experience. It was my most recent short that I've released called Tech Support.
Yeah, good piece.
I appreciate it. That screened a few great local events, like St Kilda Film Festival is something I've wanted to get into for years. It's a bit of a Victorian and Australian institution when it comes to film festivals, so it's been fantastic. And equally, Peninsula Film Festival down in Rosebud is a terrific night in the vein of Tropfest, open air.
Absolutely. So the festival circuit is growing, and yeah, massively. So, and there is, you just said that you've had one piece that did 70 or 80, you said, and that was in a year, wasn't it? Or
just under. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you can really get your film out and being seen by a lot of people.
If you're lucky, we were very lucky. It was
one good piece.
Well, it's we were really happy with it, and we were confident that people would enjoy it, but to get that sort of response from such a sort of broad spectrum of events is really pleasing. So
is there a community of short filmmakers? Is it an active community? Do you communicate amongst yourselves?
Look, there certainly is, and there's a whole lot of events that one can go along to, screening nights and so forth, and there's certainly very close friends that I've made through those communities, and collaborators as well, that make really terrific stuff, and you just sort of bond over similar influences and the like. The ones that come to mind are a filmmaking duo, Michael Jones and Caitlin Ferrugia, who have produced multiple feature films that I just thought spoke to me on a really personal level. They make really intimate, funny drama comedies, and I think we bonded over similar influences pretty fast. So there certainly is a really active community there.
So tell me about Tech Support.
So Tech Support's the most recent short film that I've released online. It's gone through a few festivals and had a really good response there. And it's the story of a young woman, Amanda, who just wants to get her internet working at home, and comes up against a very mansplaining, misogynist IT worker on the phone. And when she tells her boyfriend about it later, her boyfriend instantly sides with the IT support worker. And that was kind of the genesis of the idea. It was very much an improvised cringe comedy, exploring the idea of what happens when someone close to you sides with someone they've never met over you in a bit of a snap reflex decision almost. Yep. And we use that as a bit of a canvas to subtly explore gender politics and how we respond to things in ways that aren't ideal, or ideas that are embedded in us, I guess.
One of the things that is a real feature in your work is personal relationships. Quite a few of your pieces are about whether someone's relationship is working or it's not working. Quite a few of them particularly follow themes where relationships are not working, and the dead shark one is a perfect example of that. And also there is a lovely quality in the way there's an unexpected twist at the end.
I do love surprising people.
Yeah.
If films were all predictable all the way through, they wouldn't be interesting. So, if we can get one of those in every film, a moment where a bit of an aha moment or a surprise, I think that's it goes a long way. Yeah. In terms of the relationship focus, I guess it is, it's one of the things that we all sort of have as part of our lives. It's very universal. You know, it's one of those things that people do, you know, talk about. You talk about it with your friends and family and stuff like that. You know, stories come up. You know, I wouldn't have, if it wasn't for, you know, conversations with people or things you hear, you know, I wouldn't have any material to work with. And not in an exploitative fashion. I think that there's universal qualities and conversations that that really come from the relationship between two people, and I think for whatever reason I've gravitated towards stories like that.
I'd just like to ask you about how you work with your actors. Now, we've talked a bit about the improvised qualities.
Sure.
The work that the actors are doing is really, really good work, and I think that's partly around some of the improvising stuff. But in things like Pint, how improvised was that?
It was very scripted. There's not, because it's such a physical, visual comedy. Obviously, our protagonist doesn't say a single word throughout the entire film, so it was very much drawing on, you know, like a Chaplin, or even, you know, elements of things like Death at a Funeral, I suppose. Yeah. Working with Jackson on Pint, and, you know, I've worked with him on many projects, and we've got a very close friendship. He is someone that was on that project from the very, very beginning, and so every idea I had, I would discuss with him and Marty Gubbins, the DP. Together, we kind of, by the time we got to set, we had such a tight understanding of what it is we were trying to do. What
I noticed particularly about Jackson's work in that doing drunk is not an easy thing to do, and he does a fabulous job. He was terrific. He was really terrific. Yeah, he drew on a lot of quite. Again, I let him have a lot of ownership over that character because we discussed it to death in the development. He drew on a whole lot of things. He'd spoken to like a movement coach. We could see him doing handstands in the corner of the room to get the blood to rush to his head, so he'd be a little bit out of it. I don't think he was actually drunk at any stage. That is possible, though. We're not above having a beer or two on set. And we tried to bring the rest of the cast and crew together on that as well. Like a lot of the cast members, Fiona, the co-lead, Claude, who plays the best man, you know, we're all like really sort of close friends and worked on a bunch of stuff together. And we all knew what we were sort of getting into, and everyone really bought in. And I think from that you get a result that's not only pretty universal, but, you know, really specific, and it becomes a real joy to work on set when everyone's sort of working towards that shared vision. That certainly came across, I think. Oh, I'm glad. Yeah. That's cool. Let's switch gears a little bit. Sure. Tell me about your feature that you made. Yeah, well, it's called Short Distance. It's only just a feature, I think. Technically it's about 60.5 minutes. Okay. It was a lot of work over 2.5 years. Short distances, 2.5 years. Ironic, isn't it? The irony doesn't stop there. It's a film based around sort of 3 separate but connected stories about long distance relationships. Originally developed as sort of one continuous story. Myself and the 2 actors, Callista and Sam, were developing for quite a long time. And yeah, over the course of sort of 6 to 8 months, I kept having ideas for these other stories that I could sort of merge into it. A really successful crowdfunding campaign where we sort of raised $15,000 to make the film. Congratulations. Thank you. It was we couldn't have done it without the generosity of those supporters. And then for 21 shooting days in 2014, and then 6 pickup days in 2015, probably a year-long edit. As our editor moved overseas to be with his long-distance girlfriend. So, like I said, the irony doesn't stop there. You know, it was a bit of a slog in a lot of respects. Like, fantastic, brilliant experience, wonderful people that you work with, but also very challenging. Particularly when all of your work has to be at weekends and after hours. Indeed, yes. I think it's probably quite different if you can go, okay, I've got a month and we're doing that full time and on we go. Yeah. But trying to keep it rolling over when life is doing other things. Absolutely. I'd love to take this opportunity to apologise to the retail managers I had to inconvenience to shoot for, you know, those 20 odd days in that year. I think I was in 3 different positions, 3 different jobs. Over the course of making the film, and the shortest of those was 6 months. So, wow.
you know, I think I learned a lot. I took a lot away from that experience. What to do, what not to do.
And where did that one get exhibited?
Quite a few like independent film festivals in the US. Quite a lot in the Midwest, which is really cool. Which was
very cool.
Yeah, as you do. Yeah, we got there was a couple in the UK. There was one at the Melbourne Underground Film Festival. It felt wrong to try and monetize such a thing that was born out of, you know, generosity and community. So we made the decision to sort of give it away and put it online in June 2017. I think I'm getting that right.
Shifting again, you've done some work on a documentary.
Yeah, so back in 2012 or 2013, a close friend of mine, Kevin He, who was I think he was a journalism student at the time, producing a final piece. He sort of came to me with this idea to make a film about two friends of his, Eliza and Jess, who were both living with chronic illness. They couldn't see each other as often as possible, separated by distance and you know, the ability to see each other on as regular occasions as they would like, and use it as a chance to interview them and learn about their lives. And it was very fly on the wall, and just an opportunity to listen, I think, and get a little bit of, you know, perspective. They really are, you know, strong and remarkable women, both of them. The film's called Together Surviving, and yeah, it is just a really small little story about, you know, about friendship and how it endures.
What did you learn from doing the documentary that you've taken into other work?
I do love documentary, especially fly on the wall sort of stuff, because there's an observational feel to it that I think works really well in narrative, and I've definitely tried to use that in the films that I've made that have drawn heavily on improvised dialogue.
And I think a lot of your work is handheld, isn't it?
Yeah, especially, like I keep saying, the improvised stuff is very, very handheld, because you have to, I stitch myself constantly by only being a one camera shoot on improvised dialogue, so you kind of have to whip back and forth a little bit. I think that films that are shot classically with an amazing amount of, you know, thought and detail behind each scene, I've tried to do that as well, working with cinematographers that have done amazing work on the stuff that we've done together. But if it's just me and I'm shooting improvised stuff, it's run and gun or nothing, pretty much.
Yeah. We've talked about a number of the technical aspects of filmmaking that you are accomplished in doing yourself. Where did you learn those skills?
I think I'm bluffing most of them, if I'm being honest. I worked as an editor for about 6 months on a fishing show back in 2014 or 15, and I tooled around with editing, but that was a really instructive experience on the workflow and the organisation of it and so forth. And I've definitely used a lot of that moving forward. Camera-wise, my work as my 9-to-5 job now is working as a camera technician in rental houses. So you get a lot of chances to learn the equipment, which is a real, it's a fantastic learning opportunity, and feeling confident with the equipment that you're using, I think, is a really great way of like unlocking creative ideas. Like, oh, you know, I've got this idea, how would I accomplish this, becomes, oh, I can use this to achieve this aim.
And I suspect also knowing what the equipment can do also adds to your creativity, to be able to say, I can use this equipment in this way, so I can create these kinds of shots that you might not have come up with before. Yeah,
you can really push it and sort of you know, play around with what these things are capable of, and really learn.
Yeah, and that goes to really understanding not only how to work with actors, but also what are the opportunities that, particularly now, the equipment now can offer you.
Absolutely.
But you've also done some tertiary study in this, haven't you?
Yeah, so I was at Deakin University in Burwood for 3 years doing the Bachelor of Film and Digital Media. Finished in 2012, I think it was. And I think that was a really terrific experience for, as instructive as a lot of the stuff was, and we got a lot of fantastic opportunities through that course. A major takeaway for me is the amount of future collaborators and great friends that you met there. Philippe Lorace is the DP on my feature film, and he's a prodigiously gifted cinematographer, and I went through uni with him, and he's a extremely close friend of mine, and without that tertiary study, that relationship never happens. So
where do you see your career in filmmaking going from here, Nic?
When I left uni, I had these grand, impossible ideas of being, a famous household name director making big stuff, and I think you realise pretty quick that that's unrealistic. I think through making a lot of stuff in a relatively short amount of time with what you've got at your disposal, you slowly kind of iron out the kinks of what it is you like to do, what it is that doesn't really work for you. And I think in that respect, I don't know where it's going to lead, but I think that the stuff that I've been making over the last couple of years is, for better or worse, as distinctly me as I can make it.
Yeah, I think so too.
I love the structure of, it might be weird to say, I love the structure of a 9 to 5. And that's not something that is easily achievable in this industry. And I'm aware that I'm lucky to have that, but to have that creative outlet, push it as far as it can go with the professionalism of a careerist is something that I'm really interested in. And whether that's another feature down the track, or whether it's upping production value on these shorts, or just continuing to make stuff and put it out there, I think I'm pretty open-minded, and just, whatever interests me will interest me, and I can't really control it, I guess.
What's the next project for you? What are you working on now?
Well, I've just finished up a short film called Cheapskate in March. I finished that up. Mm-hmm. It is a improvised comedy that is about a young man whose frugality gets him into an enormous amount of personal turmoil, inspired very much by Ricky Gervais' sort of cringe comedy. Really uncomfortable comedy is something I've always really enjoyed. We've submitted that to sort of major festivals, and we'll hopefully see if we can get some results later in the year. But that's sort of the big one that's coming up for me. Yeah.
Well, congratulations, Nic. You're doing a wonderful job, and just following your passion in the way that you are is really inspiring.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming along this afternoon.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks.
I've been with Nic Barker. Thank you so much for watching Tête-à-Tête.